For the past 60 years, the Gaseous Diffusion plant has been a major force behind the city of Paducah and the Jackson Purchase region of western Kentucky. Paducah, Kentucky has become known as the Atomic City. Not only have local businesses been branded with the name, but it has filtered into local popular culture in the form of music and local sports teams ranging from softball to roller derby. The history and mission of the plant have become a source of confusion and urban legend to the local population of western Kentucky. This is the story of the Paducah Gaseous Diffusion Plant. Paducah Gaseous Diffusion Plant is located in western Kentucky, 10 miles west of the city of Paducah, near the Ohio River. The plant sits on 3,425 acres. The site is owned by DOE and leased and operated by the United States Enrichment Corporation, a subsidiary of USEC Inc., commonly known as USEC.
Paducah and McCracken County has been blessed with a plant that has employed somewhere between 1,200 people and 2,200 people throughout its history. Those people have been well paid. They're engineers, they're highly trained people, and they have, that plant has been a wonderful addition to Paducah, McCracken County and the entire purchase areas.
The plant was one of 3 uranium enrichment plants that were initially started shortly after World War II. The Manhattan Project, which was largely out in New Mexico, that developed the atomic bombs that were used to end World War II, was sort of the beginning of the nuclear age. And so after World War II, they built 3 uranium enrichment plants, one in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, one in Piketon, Ohio, and then one here in Paducah. The one located here in Paducah was largely because of the influence of, at that time, Vice President Alben Barkley.
A lot of people feel like that in 1952, Alben Barkley, who was a resident of Paducah and grew up in Paducah, was the vice president under Truman. And when he realized that they were going to build an enrichment uranium plant, he said he would like for it to be built in Paducah. And I think Alben Barkley had a great deal to do with locating in Paducah, McCracken County, but we just happened to have the land and a lot of other things that made it a reality.
After the events of World War II, the U.S. government decided to use the location of the Kentucky Ordnance Works for the emerging technology of uranium enrichment.
We were centrally located. We had an arms ammunition facility here that could be converted into a location. We were close to water, which is needed in the enrichment uranium process, being on the river.
Well, there was a lot of it done, you know, but it was in the early stages. There was still a lot of construction going on. Back then, the road going into the plant was gravel road.
I was living on Hobbs Road, which is the highway that goes into the plant. The first time they took the farm, they took it and put a gunpowder plant down there during World War II. It covered maybe 1/4 of the area that this one, maybe half. I don't know how much area. But it took our farm and many of the farms around us, and we were all moved to pretty rapidly, and there was no place to go for many of those people. Of course, they cleared everything, cleared all the houses out, moved people out, and built this little powder plant. And so many of the people in the area went to work down there. And then that closed down as soon as the war ended, I suppose, and we moved. We stayed in Heath, but Dad bought the farm back because they offered the people who'd owned them the chance to buy them back. So he bought the farm back and kept it maybe 5 years, and then they took it back, maybe less than that. And they came in, and that's when they decided to build the atomic plant down there.
The construction of the plant was a tremendous boon to the area. At the time, it probably cost about $2 billion to build a large facility, and you know, in today's dollars, that would be multiplied, you know, 8 or 10 times that amount. So tremendous financial boon during the construction period.
Well, it's the jobs out there just for the ones that work for the contractor out there. It only runs around 1,200 people, and that's not a very big impact, but it was on Paducah when they came in here. They built the 31 and 33 and 310, 315, and then they turned right around and built 35 and 37, 2 more buildings. And they extended their construction time here for a long time.
And then it started in operation in 1952. Initially, the demand for enriched uranium materials was for weapons purposes. And so this plant was the first stage of the enrichment process to develop uranium for weapons purposes, and then they sent it to another plant for further enrichment. And then it wasn't until, I guess, later in the 60s or 70s that they began to focus more on commercial power plant fuel development. And of course, in the last 20 years or more, that is all that it has produced. So it today produces uranium fuel that is enriched to about a 5% level. That's used exclusively in nuclear power plants.
That's what it was to us, the atomic plant. And of course, atomic meant bomb. That's all it meant then. There was no such thing as nuclear power. And so they were building a bomb plant. That really didn't move people out because most people hadn't gone back in there yet anyway. So many of them had bought farms other places and didn't even buy their property back. But it was mainly just farming area during that time. And by the time they got going, the farmers got going good, they'd taken it back.
USEC's public image depends on who you talk to. I think that a large part of the population in the Paducah area probably has very little direct knowledge of what goes on out there, and so mostly their opinion would be based on what they read in the newspaper or see on television. Most of those things would tend to be of a negative nature. They usually don't publicize positive news, and so it would be in the nature of some sort of a spill or some sort of a legal action or something like that. So I think the public image is largely affected by the news media. In terms of people that work at the plant, I would say the very vast majority of them would be very positive. Most of the people that have worked out there for 20 years or more, and so they clearly have little worry about potential health risks and things like that. And of course, they are good paying jobs, and so so again, I think it just depends on the familiarity with the people that you're talking to.
I think that the management has always been as forthcoming as possible without divulging anything that would be of any benefit to potential enemies.
Anything that has to do with the government has probably been lying to the public, so yes, I do believe they've been lying.
In the national sense, you have used to hear people would have the idea that something could explode out there. You could have a nuclear explosion, and people don't understand that the press doesn't want to make it clear that that's not the way that nuclear weapons detonate.
There's all kind of rumors for years and years that they made bombs and that animals have grown extra limbs and that all the groundwater is contaminated.
They have mutated animals running around.
I've heard that there are animals with extra appendages. If that's true, I would say that yes, the plant has affected the local environment.
I have heard rumors that people have gotten sick by working there at the plant. I have heard that some of the people nearby who go fishing near the plant wind up sick from the animals that they catch in the lake, or the deer or the rabbit that they hunt from around there.
I live probably about 7 minutes away from it.
My uncle works at USEC, but I have no idea what he does.
My husband works there.
I know a lot of people that live around there.
I don't know, they've
like take uranium and stuff, and they, I don't know what they do with it. Make some kind of crazy stuff.
What goes on at the uranium enrichment plant is they take uranium hexafluoride, which is a processed form of uranium. It comes out of the ground as a uranium oxide. The Honeywell plant in Metropolis, Illinois converts the uranium oxide into uranium hexafluoride, which is a gas, and they force the uranium hexafluoride gas through a series of sieves or filters, if you want to think of it that way. And it turns out that there are two types of uranium molecules. There's a uranium-235 and a uranium-238. And the sieve or the filter tends to let one of them pass through a little easier than the other. And so it makes the concentration of the uranium-235 in one stream a little higher, 238 in the other stream a little higher. And so those two streams then are separated, and that process has to be repeated many times in order to get the concentration that they need of the radioactive uranium-235 element. The enrichment of uranium is required in order to have the critical reaction that's needed in a nuclear power plant. The uranium in the ground that occurs naturally, the uranium oxide ore, is at a concentration that can't sustain a nuclear reaction that's needed to generate the heat and energy emissions for a power reaction. And so what they can do by enriching it, they get more of a dense concentration of the radioactive uranium elements, and then once you have what's called a critical mass of the radioactive uranium in a confined space, then it's a self-propagating reaction process. And so the enrichment process is where they can then get that concentration needed to reach that critical mass of radioactive uranium to sustain the reaction.
In 1951, the average American's hourly wage was $1.35 per hour.
I hired in as an operator trainee at the humongous salary of $1.58 per hour. And I remember there was a branch bank out there where we'd cash checks, and we'd go in over there, we'd cash our checks, and of course construction workers, and we'd cash our checks, and one of our checks would be like one day for them. And, you know, they were working 10, 12 hours a day and making, I mean, we'd get $1.58 an hour. That was a little over $60, and they'd get that much in one day, and they would comment to us, say, "You guys just worked one day this week," or something. No, that's a full week. But we started in, or at least I did. I know all the operator trainees started in at $1.58 an hour.
And we hadn't been out there 2 months till they come through and give us a 10-cent an hour raise.
I was a school teacher, and I worked in a coal mine, but then I took a job teaching school in Carterville, Illinois, $200 a month. And when I came down here, that's one of the things that encouraged me. I got $300 and I believe it was $65 a month. And that was a tremendous raise, almost double my salary. I'll have to be honest, that was a primary reason for coming. Although I love school teaching, I knew, or I felt, that school teaching would never the pay would never be as good as industrial pay.
I thought if I ever made $100 a week, I didn't know what I'd do with all my money. You know, but that's been a long time ago.
Yes, it was a good job. Of course, you know, like I said, I started out low, but then we progressed on up the line. So
the guy said, "Well, you're probably not going to be here but about 3 years anyway. This plant's not going to last very long." I said, "Well, that's okay." I said, "I'm not doing anything anyway." you know. So it's no big deal if it doesn't. You do something else, you know. So, but I lasted 35 years.
Everybody carpooled. I was with carpool with 2 or 3 fellas almost all the time I was there. I was never in a carpool with less than 4. Most of the time it was 5 of us in a car. So that held the traffic down quite a bit. I think that the people that drove by themselves were people that had uncertain hours. Say plant manager, department managers, people that thought they might have to work over and did work over quite often for some reason or other. Most of us had regular hours over in carpools. There were people driving from way up into Illinois, way down in Tennessee, way into Missouri. There's even one fellow that drove from Evansville, Indiana, because housing was so scarce. See, that produced not only the 1,800 jobs that, for the plant, but the place was crawling with construction people. And a lot of the construction people were driving long distances because they knew they weren't going to live here and they didn't want to buy a house or try to buy one. There wasn't any houses to buy. I looked at the market and there just wasn't a thing in '53, early '53. But when 59 or 60, the housing became a little more available.
We rented a little house in Granville, Kentucky. It had 3 rooms, and my daughter was born when we lived there. And it had 3 rooms in a little shotgun house. And we started out paying $45 a month rent. They changed it, and my rent went down to $25 a month.
Well, houses come up everywhere. Forks Hills and a lot of these housing projects came up because there was no housing for the construction workers.
Back in the early days, yeah, they had the softball league and all types of bowling leagues, and that you know, back in the early days, we had a good softball team.
Oh yeah, I was on softball team. Yeah, we played down where Tillman High School is now. That was ball fields all over that area right there, and our instrument department, we had a couple of real good pitchers.
We had bowling leagues, and we had softball leagues, we had a baseball club, and a baseball team, and a good baseball team, and good softball teams. We had several leagues, several different teams.
I played baseball. I was a very good baseball player. I got to brag a little bit. Now, in the Army, I played on a team that won the 2nd place in the European Championships.
Had a fishing program, you know, certain rules and regulations for that during the summer and the fall.
But I played baseball, softball. I was tennis champion at the plant.
A lot of bowlers also, lots of bowlers. They had several bowling leagues.
I was president of the bowling league over there one year, and we bowled over at Cardinal Point. And we started out bowling on the upstairs floor of the Ferguson building down here.
Plans to cease production at the Paducah Gaseous Diffusion plant have already begun.
The latest news that USAC may shut down has been pretty devastating for the community.
I know that they've been saying it's going to shut down for about 10 years now, so I don't think it is.
The only rumors is that it's going to close in about 4 or 5 years, which I doubt.
I don't really know if the plant will ever be shut down. I have heard, though, that even if they close it tomorrow, it will take 10 years to actually get it all closed down.
Years later, the debate continues over the plant closure and what will be done with the land after the shutdown.
Well, the USAC operation at some point will stop. I'm not sure at what point, what year that is. That depends on the progress that's made at the Portsmouth plant. So once that Portsmouth plant is up and running with their new technology, then USAC will go into a shutdown mode, and then eventually USAC will move out of the plant, and then DOE will finish the cleanup of all the activities out there, and then some of that ground will be turned back to the public or turned back, you know, for industrial use or whatever use. The plant itself, the buildings that are out there, will have to be taken down. Those buildings and what's in them has mild contamination. So those buildings will be taken down, and that product will be taken somewhere else, or something will be done with the building material. Now, then you're going to have left a wonderful 1,200-acre site with roads, good roads, good location. It's within a mile of our regional airport. And so that could become a industrial park. And it could become an industrial park that would maybe house a nuclear power plant. It could maybe house other industry that manufactures parts for our nuclear energy process, or it could be office buildings and tire manufacturers, auto parts manufacturers. It could be a lot of different things, but it's an excellent site for future development.
I think industrial use would be a better use of the land because it's already contaminated. There would be no point in moving a facility like that to another location. Why would you go and contaminate another location when that ground's already dirty? And in my opinion, I don't think that it can be cleaned up enough to be opened up for public use. Maybe wildlife sanctuary, maybe. I think it'd be a better idea just to leave it as a uranium enrichment park, possibly. Something to do with uranium because it's already contaminated, so you might as well use that area for what it's been used for the past 50, 60 years.
Maybe they could put it like wind-powered things, solar-powered panels, something that doesn't emit things into the earth, but could help us in the long run.
I do not think it should be used for public use of any kind because of my knowledge of the facility and what's still out there and what will remain out there for a number of years, even though they say they clean it up, whatever scenario that they use. There are contaminants out there that are harmful to public, to individuals. And I know I have 4 children and 5 grandchildren, and I wouldn't want any of them out there playing on that ground or whatever, working. Or
who wants to live on site or close to a radioactive, facility? I mean, there could be any type of runoff, however minute it would be. It would still be runoff, and it would still be dangerous to people and their families.
I think it's very risky for the United States to only have one facility left for this purpose.
A lot of lost jobs. That's pretty much it.
So you wouldn't really, it wouldn't affect your immediate family or friends or your circumstances?
Absolutely not. Until you just mentioned that, I never really thought about it.
Economy probably will be hurt as far as jobs, but I don't know how they're going to get rid of all of the chemicals and the stuff that is bad for us. I don't know how they're planning on getting rid of all of that. I wouldn't want to buy any of the property around it, nor any of the property or anything from the plants.
I would say it's definitely been contaminated. I'm not an expert in uranium, although I have worked around it before. The stuff that they work with across the rivers is some pretty highly radioactive material. I know the groundwater's been contaminated. That's been proven. I don't know where they are in the cleanup efforts.
I've heard that the groundwater is contaminated. In fact, it's been pretty well proven that they've had to close several wells and stuff like that. I've heard that they did pretty well what they wanted to do back in the 50s and 60s, early 60s. The government didn't control them like they do now. In fact, the government was what was doing it. There's a big push for nuclear weapons and nuclear stuff like that. And they've contaminated the ground considerably. I've never been on their property, but I believe that. I think they're in bad shape.
You're talking about a company that where the janitor starts at $17 an hour. And this company employs 2,000 jobs. That's like 3,000 to 4,000 minimum wage jobs out of a community of 25,000 people. And they're gone. Everyone knows what happened to Eastern Kentucky when the mines left. It's nothing over there. It destroyed the entire area.
I think it'll affect more than just the local economy. I think people from Metropolis, Mayfield, Murray, people commute to work. So I think that it's going to affect more than just the local community. But it'll definitely be different here when they leave.
And I think it'd be terrible for the economy of Western Kentucky because it's one of the largest employers in the western end of the state.
Those are good paying jobs, a ton of them, and it was an economic boom when that plant hit. I mean, there was just a building frenzy all over Paducah. Values of people's land went up tremendously, so a lot of people, it just trickled down very quickly, and a lot of people prospered. And I think it'll do the opposite, just in reverse. It'll be the same process, and be a lot of people hurt.
It would be devastating. I mean, it's the largest employer in the tri-state. The standard of living of Paducah would go down. I can't imagine any business that they could bring in right now in the way the economy is to replace that many jobs, good paying jobs.
I'd like to see something come in here that will benefit the entire community and create some jobs and livelihood for this area.
A lot of people locally are employed at USEC. I actually have a couple of family members who are employed there, so I'm guesstimating it's going to have a tremendous impact on, the workforce as far as the raise in unemployment for, typical middle-aged Americans who, being made that their career, they're not able to specialize in much else.
It's good in a sense of it's helped people with jobs and money. It's bad because everybody that doesn't work there is getting hurt by the chemicals and stuff.
I don't know that they'll ever get it clean enough to do anything with it.
I couldn't see where somebody could come in and build a house, put a playground in the backyard for their kids on contaminated soil.
A lot of people would say that it might be a good idea to turn it into some kind of reserve or plant some trees, help the environment.
Obviously a nuclear power plant is something that we've looked at. The recycling facility, those types of things. Obviously there's a trained workforce here in the nuclear industry, and those folks would like to have employment in the area that they're trained. Other areas of industrial use would be welcome. Obviously the workforce has a good work ethic, and I just think being able to create some jobs on that site that has produced so many jobs over the years will be crucial.
We swim in the waters around here. I live within 5 miles of the plant. So I'm very concerned about their health and very hopeful that the funding is there to properly to disperse and get rid of the toxins that are going to be left on that site for many years to come.
Well, I'd like for whoever's in charge, the big bosses, to get together with the communities and find out what their thought is on this. How safe is it going to make us? Because we live around these companies, and sometimes we don't feel real safe.
We are watching the cleanup activities very closely, and one of the exciting things that's happened out there is that they got about $80 million in stimulus funds from the federal government that they have put right to work out there on shovel-ready projects to accelerate a lot of the cleanup activities. And so they've actually taken that federal stimulus money that, a lot of people say goes nowhere, or some bridge or highway or a project that never happens. That's not the case out there at USEC. The DOE funds have been well used to accelerate cleanup and, make a lot of progress out there.
They should donate it to us old veterans. Let us go out there and have a party about 3 times a week and open root beer bar, all that good stuff, you know.